I will bring up a question that it's a sort of a beating like a dead horse, but I'll give you my own twist, and the question is accuracy, right? And I think it's a misused or misinterpreted term, and what I mean by this is the following. And let me give you an analogy, right? Imagine I'm looking at a landscape. I'm actually looking at the landscape through a window, but the window is a little dirty, and maybe the glass is not the best glass, right? Versus, right, on the other hand, I have this high megapixel image taken of this landscape, but it's a flat image, right? And in a way, that's the way I think about vinyl, right? Vinyl is like this sort of like maybe noisy or whatever, but somehow I'm seeing through in a way. Maybe you're a very digital person, and so maybe you wouldn't agree with that, but this is where I'm coming from, right? When I think of accuracy, especially of a speaker, I think of how much it connects me with the music, not whether it's all the frequency response is perfect or anything like that. What's your vision or view of this?
The first thing, shouldn't have mentioned vinyl. Now I'm with MoFi because I have to like vinyl.
Oh, yes. So say yes.
So I agree with, I've had this discussion often. I've done an almost complete reversal from where I came from.
Okay.
So the school of thought that I grew up with, starting at KEF, and associations with companies like Quad, Peter Walker, straight wire with gain for his amplifiers, that kind of thing. And then you've got the closest approach to the original sound. So there's supposed to be a reference that is what you're aiming for. And that's a nice idea,
right?
But it's not a possibility. And I say that almost as a self-evident axiom that you have to accept. It's so funny, when I was at university, my best friend switched from doing physics to doing social studies, which included philosophy. One day we're having a discussion about things, and he says something and I try and challenge it, and he says, "No, you can't challenge that, it's a self-evident axiom." I'm going, what on earth is that? I don't know what that means. Well, it's an axiom, it's self-evident. Well, that didn't really get the discussion much progressed, but some things you're supposed to not challenge.
Right.
You accept and then you build from that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How, in order to have accuracy, you've got to have a source of that sound that exists in real life, right? So let's say, obviously that exists. Acoustic instruments in an acoustic space. How many of us listen to that as the majority of our music? Very few. Everything else is fully manufactured. Even if it takes real instruments that you could have heard acoustically, they're mic'd up, they're EQ'd, they've had all sorts of effects. Very few of the recordings we grew up with, and of course which were on vinyl, very few of those are any attempt to capture the acoustic reality of what those instruments were. Right. And then of course a lot of instruments don't have an acoustic reality at all.
Right.
And the sound of a electric guitar is heavily dependent on which amplifier stack you put it through.
Right. Or a synthesizer.
Or a synthesizer, right. So if I were to, I could neatly sidestep the whole argument by saying, well, let's forget about real instruments. Pretty much everything we listen to is manufactured and we have no clue what it's supposed to sound like. Right. I even used to partly moderate my viewpoint, and I used to say, I'm after the, it sounds very erudite, I'm after the original artistic intent. Oh, well, I don't even know what that is.
I think somebody else said that.
Yeah.
From Britain, you know.
And Cookie Marenko, I saw her once say, these people keep talking about original artistic intent. There's no such thing. You can't know that either. And I'm going, yeah, actually, I have to agree with you there. Unless you had any possibility of being in the studio when they were doing that and with the producer, and you heard what he heard over those speakers. But then they're not making the decision just on listening to it on those speakers in that studio.
Right.
I went round to Steve Vai's studio and took my active speakers for him to listen to. And he walks in with his iPhone and he says, "Can I just play my iPhone through these?" That was the first way he was going to listen to my speakers. I'm going, huh? Plug them into the outlet of the desk and put one of your masters on, please. So I asked him, well, how do you evaluate? And it's got to sound good on this and this and this.
Right, that's fair.
Right? That's fair, that's commercial. And so you don't really know, was there actually one standard that producer decided that it sounds good on this system and this is how it should be heard? So that, and then we get to acoustic music. Well, you've still got to capture it.
Right, right.
With microphones. Well, which microphones? Where do you put them? How many do you use? We listen over two speakers in a very different way of processing the signal than we do in an acoustic live space.
Right.
Do we actually reproduce the acoustics of the live space by listening over two speakers? No, we don't.
Right.
So what we're attempting to do is give the best interpretation. You know, going back to the open window or paintings, it's not photorealism, it's impressionism almost.
Right.
So that leaves me then in a quandary as a speaker designer. Coming from an engineering background, believing in measurements, which I still absolutely believe in measurements. Measurements tell me a lot about what's going on and they guide me. But my excuse is nothing's perfect. So I have to work out amongst those imperfections, which ones do I optimize, which ones don't I? But here's my quandary. I have to listen to it. I'm constantly having to evaluate the accuracy of the measurement versus what I hear.
Right.
The relevance of that particular measurement to what I hear.
Yeah.
But how do I hear it? I've got to listen to recordings that I don't know what they're supposed to sound like.
Right.
So I've come to the view that although I keep talking about measurement versus listening and what constitutes accuracy, basically it's the sound I'm going to give you is the sound I enjoy listening to through the kinds of music I enjoy. Now, hopefully I also listen to music I don't like, which I do, to see, well, how does my speaker sound like through those? But if I don't know what that music is like when I was doing TAD, I took it to Air Studios. And I'm doing my show and tell, and I playing some CDs to show it what it can do. And after a few of those, I think, well, this is stupid. I'm at Air Studios. Why am I playing commercial CDs? I thought, okay, guys, plug it into your desk, play something that you've mixed and recorded yourself. Right. And one guy put this, I don't know, grunge rock, or I don't know what the category was. All I know is it was kind of this high intensity screaming guitar dense thing, and they just turned it so loud I'm almost cowering in the corner. And whatever it sounded like, I have no idea, is that what it's supposed to sound like? And at the end the guy said, that was remarkable. Okay, but I could not have used that myself.
Right.
So you look for the closest equivalent. So if you want to know what it's sounding like on a dense type of music, like a heavy grunge rock or whatever, well, how about a big horn section? That's dense and high energy in that same frequency range. And I know what that should sound like. So you're always on the lookout for the kinds of music that can help you evaluate.
Right.
But ultimately, it's, if I like how it sounds, that's what I'm going to put out.
Right.
And then hope it works
Yeah,
out.
I have a very pedestrian personal definition of accuracy. It is when it clicks, right? When I'm listening to it, and yes, that sounds right. And I cannot point to what it is.
That is very good observation, because I've said this even to my guys that I work with, and especially setting up for a show, you'll be struggling for a day or two, moving everything around, switching things in and out, but there will be one moment where you suddenly go, that's it.
Right.
And you go, you didn't know you could get there because you're struggling all the time. And then you go, that's it. I'm now happy. After that point, even during the show, the evenings, you'll come back in to just listen to the system,
right,
and be playing lots of different music for yourself,
right,
because you've reached that click point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I imagine that when you're designing a speaker, that sort of sort of phase transition that, okay, I've gotten to the character I want, all of a sudden happens to you, right?
Yes.
Like,
even with ELAC, I say even with ELAC, that sounds dismissive. At ELAC, when I was doing the debut reference, when I get it together and started listening, there was a point at which I go, that's what voices are supposed to sound like.
right.
And it just struck me, that single thing, yeah, that's it. And it's almost, going back to the kind of mid-range only is all I care about. Once I knew that voice was what I wanted, it was almost going, okay, I gotta go, guess the rest of it will do, because that voice is just working for me.
Yeah. I imagine you also have to be very careful not to destroy what you just heard, right, with the changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's tricky. I suppose that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have about the measurement only, let's say, is to know that that's the right kind of measured response.
Exactly.
Had to be done through listening tests. So ultimately, the listening test was the arbiter, but it gets back to listening to what?
Right.
And you try and average it out over lots of listeners and do statistical analysis and all of this, which is all very valid. But it always gets back to that listening sensation. And if you say there's only one measurement curve or set of curves is the right one, that's very ivory tower, university type thinking.
Yeah.
Out in the marketplace, there's such a variety of sounds that sell very well. There are some speakers I can't listen to, but they sell.
Yeah. Right.
So you have to be careful about the danger of lecturing and saying, this is what you're supposed to be listening to.
Right.
It's good to educate people, and if you feel you are educated, you like to bring everybody up. But there's a fine line there between educating and I forget the word, but just telling this is the way you should do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's clear in the marketplace there's a huge variety, and so I'm lucky that what I like keeps me in business and a lifestyle.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. Andrew, it was a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, always my pleasure. Everyone knows I always like being on camera. So.
It's great.
Right, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bye.